Boys and girls, it is that time of the day. It is the HUD episode number 5, I believe. If I'm keeping up track, if I'm in the right state of mind, I believe this is the 5th episode of the HUD. Welcome everyone to the 5th episode. If you're in the stream, if you're on YouTube, and if you're on SoundCloud, because that's now a thing. For those who have not tuned in, or if you've never listened to the podcast before, you have other opportunities now to listen to it or to watch it, because it's now available on SoundCloud. If you guys would like to use the link, it's up in the top right corner, the HUD TV on SoundCloud. If you guys are interested, make sure to obviously try and get involved with that. Would be greatly appreciated if you guys would like to do that as well. And we'll kind of move on as kind of talk about what's going on in the show today. There isn't a crazy, when I say crazy amount, there isn't like a crazy absurd amount of stuff to talk about today. There is a little bit though, a little bit here and there that we can kind of mention, kind of brief over a little bit as well. Things going over, Parasite. He's officially come back to Call of Duty, which we totally all did not know that was going to happen. New squads are kind of forming up. We've seen a couple of official announcements today, kind of coming in. We have some basically, ideas of what rosters are going to form, what rosters aren't going to form, stuff like that. Pretty basic stuff when it comes down to the whole limelight of things. But generally, we have a pretty standard show, and we're also going to be talking about one thing that I think is really not as focused on that I would like to talk about today, is going to be the topic of the recent weapon patch that did go through, the patch notes and whatnot, which I think is very, very important to talk about, which I am really, really looking forward to mentioning. In some ways, have a little bit of a rant, if you want to kind of call it that. Today we're talking about it as well. So I think today's show is going to be really awesome. Really looking forward to it. It's not going to be incredibly long. But I've also been getting a couple questions before we hop into the first topic, which is all the rosters and whatnot. I've been getting a lot of questions regarding and saying, why haven't you put a webcam in yet? Why have you not been doing that recently? And the whole point behind that is I want people to realize that, I realize this isn't necessarily a podcast. I mean, it is a podcast, but it's not. It's more like a radio show. I try to tailor it to more of a radio feel. But it's not meant to be like a podcast. It's meant to, for the most part, be a radio show. It's meant to, if you're playing Call of Duty or you're trying to, do something else, you're doing something in the mainframe, this is something that you can kind of put on in the background. If you're driving, I personally drive a lot for work and whatnot. You just turn on the show, man, and you just have like a nice chill time, relax, and just enjoy the show. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's more of a radio show than it is anything else. So I'm trying to tailor it to that. For those who may be curious at all. I was gonna put that out there. So webcam, will it come? Maybe if we reach like our 10th episode or our 100th episode, I don't know. I just totally went to two different spectrums. But yeah, if we reach a certain milestone, maybe I'll have a webcam episode. If I like it enough, then maybe we'll just kind of move on. You know what I mean? So we'll kind of see what happens. And I'm kind of going all over the place, but you guys can obviously see the lineup off to the right. We got roster lock, patch notes, COD mentality, and also as well questions from the chat. If you guys tweet at the HUD TV. Of course, you can see the HUD TV Twitter link up in the left corner. If you guys want to tweet at the HUD TV, if you guys have any questions or anything that I haven't covered, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it on the show. I'm also looking to try and get a certain format to where potentially I can maybe try to have you guys on the show as well. Try to get you guys involved, meaning that, hey, you guys can maybe call in or maybe even leave a message or something like that to where I can kind of address it. I want to make it so that you guys can actually have a voice rather than like, hey, this is my text that I sent you that I want you to kind of cover. Like, no, we can actually have a full-on, kind of conversation, if that makes any sense. So, with that in mind, we always try to go over this. I've been telling you guys I'm going to be going over this every single episode until Champs is over or until it's kind of getting really boring. But of course, we have not really a quick recap on Champs qualification. Ever since our last episode, no other team has qualified yet. So if you're curious, feel free to watch episode 4. It's the very beginning of every show where I go over every team who has qualified so far for Call of Duty XP or for Call of Duty Championships 2016. It's a big deal. It's a big tournament prize pool. Of course, you see Faliberti kind of mentioning as well. The Dota 2 prize pool for the, TI5, TI6? Is it TI5? I think it's a TI5, I believe, which is pretty crazy. As well, I think they're like close to $20 million, which is absolutely insane. Crowdfunding, Call of Duty. Will they ever mix? Who knows? Who knows? But, so, how do I want to start this off? MLG Orlando is obviously coming up. And I believe most likely our next episode, unless something crazy happens, unless like a bunch of, not drama goes down, but and there's not a whole lot of stuff to talk about, I will most likely wait until maybe like August 5th to potentially upload the next show, because I want to have my MLG Orlando predictions, and I'm having a hard time trying not to kind of fiddle in with my predictions for this episode because of the rosters that have recently formed. I've been watching a lot of teams play and so on and so forth. So if you're curious, if you want to know about LNG Orlando, I will have a full-on show dedicated to that, my predictions. And potentially, we can maybe try and have a show after every single day to recap what has happened for that day. Go over stuff, give you guys updates, and you guys can obviously be really involved with that as well. That's actually how our first episode started, was the Season 2 finals. I think it was like day 1 or day 3 or something like that. I did a full-on recap of that. So along with that as well, after MLG Orlando, we will be having the qualifiers for NA August 12th. And I believe today, the reason why we were having such a big deal about this show today is the fact that it is officially roster lock for MLG Orlando. I'm not sure the exact time. Normally it's either like before midnight tonight on like Pacific time, or it's by noon Pacific time. So it's either happened yet or it's really close. Everyone's announcing their teams, so I'm pretty sure that's already happened. But if not, of course, we will be seeing updates kind of coming through potentially, which should be good. We obviously do very well when updates are coming on mid-show. That's always a fun time to have, and always an issue, I guess, if you want to kind of put it that way. So yes, let's obviously hop into the first topic for today, which is going to be the Orlando roster lock. A big deal, of course, obviously, for the fact that there aren't a crazy amount of teams making changes. There are a good amount, obviously, but when it kind of comes down to the overall, top echelon of teams, your Optics, your Envies, your Rise Nations, your FaZe, LG, Elevate, DT, those teams, etc. Everyone knows that those squads most likely aren't going to make a change. There was a rumor, which I talked about in the last episode. I'm not trying to recap everything last episode. I do apologize. I think the stream went offline for 5 seconds. It's just OBS being weird. I do apologize. If you guys see people in the chat, or if you're in the chat right now, feel free to refresh. I apologize for that. Everything should be good, though. But there was a rumor going around that teams who were qualified for Call of Duty XP already could make a change. That was a rumor that apparently happened. That was kind of miscommunication between the Call of Duty World League and the developers at Call of Duty as well. Being those guys. Activision, I almost said Treyarch, which is not obviously the case. So I'm not 100% sure how that was working. No team obviously made a change, at least as far as we know. So the teams who are already set in stone to make it into Call of Duty XP have not made a change yet. And I doubt we're going to see anything happen. I don't think it's really anything to worry about. But if it is, we can obviously update you guys. It is a thing that can happen as far as I'm concerned. But as far as a definite yes, this can happen, or no, this cannot happen, it still remains to be seen. That's just is the problem right now, because I honestly don't even think that some of the people who are developing this stuff even fully know what's actually going on, sadly. So yes, so what's obviously going on. We were talking about the roster a lot. We talked about the teams who were most likely not going to make a potential change. But as far as the teams who have made a change already, or to be decided, is I believe the old TSM team, which we've talked about in past, which is obviously the roster of Wheats, Pac-Man, Ivy, and recently added Burns Up. They lose Cold Chan. He wants to leave the team. It's obviously very, very well known that's going to be the case. We obviously see him leave. The Bane Slayer for the team, probably, in most people's opinions, the most talented player on the squad as well. If you want to put maybe Wheats in that conversation as well, you can easily do that. They obviously add Burns off. Wasn't really playing for a team. Probably his highlight through Black Ops 3 was playing with Team Liquid, nearly qualified, lost to H2K, and then, they got reverse sweeped in best of 7, which is really unfortunate. To be honest, it's really unfortunate to be completely honest with you. In the long run, I guess you wouldn't kind of put it that way. However, though, the addition of Burns Off, I think is good. I mean, it's a good thought in theory, because I think Burns Off, and I've said this countless times, is that it's great to add another sub. Obviously, that's what they need, because Wheats and Pac-Man are going to be the main ARs for this team. However, like I said, I don't think that two supports is really going to work. 2 supports to me is just not something that I see being successful. And when it comes down to Black Ops 3, everyone knows the game by now. It's not like, hey, it's a fresh game. We can kind of do different strategies. We can do different things that people aren't going to expect. No, it's like, hey, do you know how to slay? Yes, good. You're going to be successful. If you don't, hey, you're probably not going to work out very well as a team. Now, granted, those teams will come. Those teams have happened. More likely and more recently, DT. Not very often you're going to see all players go positive, if ever, right? Because at times you're going to see Chino not do the best, Diabolic not do the best. Most of the time, Cinder and Kill are going to be under the one overall KD. those guys can win without having to completely outslay their opponents. But that doesn't work for many teams. If the other 90% or 95% of teams that exist right now, at least as far as the competitive level is concerned, the other teams in the past have done a good job at doing that. I think I mentioned like the old Elevate or TR back in Advanced Warfare was not at all the best slaying team, but they destroyed people, which is just overall just credit to their overall, I guess you could say, game knowledge and whatnot. Same thing with Enigma 6, Advanced Warfare. Young team, great group of guys. We're not the best at slaying, but they were a top team, man. They were incredible. I loved watching those guys. It's so sad when they ended up splitting and going to different routes. It was like that one night that they just completely dropped their entire team, except for obviously General. But yeah, that was a sad day. I'm not even gonna lie, that was a pretty sad day. That was pretty bad. But that was a great team as well, who didn't really get the slaying done. So those squads have existed. I'm not saying that this isn't possible. I'm just saying when you have a squad who is going up against the best teams on a consistent basis, going to Call of Duty XP, the biggest tournament that Call of Duty Esports has ever had, I don't think it's gonna happen, man. I like this team. I like the group of guys. I think they're gonna work well together. I think that you have a group of veterans as well. I mean, you have Wheats, Pac-Man, and Burnsoff who've been playing this game for a crazy long time. I'm not sure when Ivy officially started, but I know he's been known more recently, like Advanced Warfare. And I think I heard about him in Ghost as well. But in the more recent titles is where he's kind of been known. I know Burns was playing for a while. I think he might have been playing other esports before before Call of Duty, excuse me. But I know he's been kind of fairly well known, especially since like Black Ops 2 and Ghost as well, playing on Curse and whatnot. So I guess the veterans on the team, especially Wheats and Pac-Man, probably the longest running duo in Call of Duty esports history. Not on a consistent basis, or not on a a basis where they've never teamed with other guys, but on the fact that they've just always seemed to find each other on the same team. So chemistry is going to be there. Slaying, though, that might be where they kind of lack. So we'll see what happens, though. I haven't been able to watch them play too much. We'll see what org ends up picking them up. I know that's been an issue with a lot of teams right now, is that they cannot find an organization for MLG Orlando. A lot of organizations are kind of holding on to Call of Duty XP, and granted, I can't really blame them, especially when a lot of these teams have been kind of thrown together at the last minute. So next team we have is H2K. This is not a confirmed roster. Anything can happen. And of course, you got to keep in mind as well, when it comes down to MLG Orlando, you have to have 3 out of the 4 of your team from that original stage. So, for example, the 12 teams who ended up making it through Stage 1, or who qualified for Stage 1, so this is all 12, not just the top 8, all 12 teams got an invite to MLG Orlando if they are able to keep 3 of the 4 teammates that they originally had. So if you want to put 100 Thieves up there, no. That team doesn't get really, it doesn't happen for them, right? DT can, even though they're not under the same name, because DT gave the team the credit. Same thing with TSM as well. That's why they only made a 1-team change. And I guess I can't really call them TSM anymore, but you guys get my point, right? So if you do make a certain change, that leaves a spot open to European Call of Duty World League teams. So for example, I'm pretty sure 100 Thieves automatically out of there. If there's another team, you can kind of throw those out there as well. That's because that's most likely why Infuse is going to get a pool play spot. That's almost guaranteed that's going to happen unless something crazy happens, which I don't think it's going to. So basically, it's almost confirmed that Infuse is going to have a spot in pools, which I know I'm kind of giving a little bit of talk about MLG Orlando already. That's why you're seeing certain teams not make 2-man charades, only 1-man charades. They're trying to keep their whole team together. And the players realize that as well, right? Because they're not like, oh, well, I'm going to go with this team and fight through the open bracket. It's like, well, maybe I should stick with my other 2 guys that we try to find a 4th because I'm automatically guaranteed to be in pool play. And the open bracket is incredibly stressful, so I would not blame them one bit if they wanted to try and stay together, just for that particular reason of just trying to make sure they don't have another hurdle to kind of go over. But yeah, H2K has been playing with, obviously, Fears, Legal, Fizzerp, as well as Dito recently. Dito coming from Cloud9 Eclipse. I know they've been trying out some other guys. I think Accuracy might have actually been trying to play with them for a little bit of time. Dito's a good guy, good player. Granted, he doesn't have the best history as far as like teammates are concerned. Guys don't really like to team with him that often just because of his attitude, at least from what I've been able to witness or hear. So that's not my experience, obviously, because I never played with Dito or anything like that. But that's just like what I've heard from people say. That's the reason why in Advanced Warfare he tried to find a group of guys who weren't very well known. That's when we saw the rise of Isolation Empire. A great team, incredible team, really. And that's why we see like a lot of those guys now have a lot of success. Guys like Havoc, guys like Silly, and guys like Assault, or not really Assault, excuse me. Who am I missing? Lamagod as well. So I mean, you got a lot of really talented guys who have been on that team and really seen a lot of success thanks to Dito. I mean, literally, he gave them a full-on pedestal to what has been the rest of their Call of Duty career. So with that in mind, Dito's recent squad, C9 Eclipse, have 2 players leave, which is unfortunate for them. But of course, Cloud9 trying to form a the best squad that they can, obviously, because they already have a guaranteed pool play spot. They have two organizations or 2 rosters. So if you want to say they have the regular Cloud9, they have Cloud9 Eclipse. Whether or not you believe it or not, Cloud9 Eclipse in some ways is kind of like the secondary team, meaning that if Cloud9 is not playing very well, then they have another team off to the side. If you want to call them like a D-League team, for example, or a secondary team that they can kind of pick off of that and say, who's doing well in this? Well, we're going to take him from the development team or whatever and move him on to the regular team, which is very smart. They've done that in other esports. That just goes to show the knowledge that they have when it comes to everything, and it really doesn't make too much of a difference, really, that they did end up releasing both Mox and Dito. It is unfortunate. That's a really good player in both Mox and Dito, but, you know, realistically, when they probably realized that, hey, do you really want to find another team to go through the open bracket? We already have a guaranteed squad. We have a good group that we feel confident in. Is it really worth the extra money? Maybe so, maybe not. But if, apparently to them, it's not. So we'll see what happens. Of course, H2K, the loss of Lacefield was really the thing that kind of started off Roster Mania, to be completely honest with you. And it is officially Roster Mania. It's not just, rosters happening and whatnot. So, of course, the loss of Lacefield really did hurt this team. I mean, Lacefield, as great as a player as he is, just the overall backbone to have someone who you know is going to drop numbers, as far as a sub is considered especially. Because there are some great ARs that are out there. I think, honestly, there are way more free agent ARs who are trying to find a team who are very talented, who are having a problem finding a team, than SMGs. But if you find a really good SMG who can beat all of the subpar or the average, that's exactly where Lacefield comes in. Now, granted, he's not the best SMG player in the world, but he's incredibly aggressive. He knows what he's doing. He's smart. He wants to grind. He has all the good characteristics to make a good sub player. So when you lose that from any team, they're obviously going to struggle. You know what I mean? They're obviously going to struggle without a doubt. So the addition of Dito in some cases for Lacefield, I'm not going to compare the two because they're in some ways completely different players for the most part. If you kind of want to put it that way. But Dito's more of a objective-minded guy from my understanding. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the squad. Just in general, because I'm looking forward to seeing how Dito does on this team. You do have a lot of veteranship on the squad. I mean, these guys have been playing for an incredibly long time. So we'll see what happens with that. Looking forward to seeing how the squad does, so on and so forth. We'll go and move on. Regular Cloud9, though. We obviously talk about Cloud9 Eclipse, Dito's issues, of course, with the Cloud9 name. Well, Cloud9 now has a more stacked team, in my opinion. Definitely forming around the 2 incredibly young players, of course, of Havoc and Assault. They obviously add both Silly and Swarly to the new teams, or to the new team as well. And this honestly is probably one of my favorite teams. This is probably one of my favorite teams, and to my opinion, they have a big 3. Silly being the AR, more of a roaming AR, along with Assault, who's going to be remaining pretty. I want to say he's playing slow, but he's one of the slower AR players that we have in the game. So it's nice to have a little bit of a mix-up to where you look at his counterpart and saying, yes, he can run around with the AR, he can do a good job, he can kind of maybe even take over a little bit of Assault's positioning when it comes down to certain things. Silly's going to be running around the map. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of like Josh from Splice. They kind of play similarly, in my opinion. Because if anyone who's watched Splice play, they know that Josh literally plays an AR like an SMG. I mean, he is literally running around the map consistently. And basically, Assault kind of plays like Swanee on Stronghold CTF. So, you know what I mean? I'm just kidding. And to answer the question, I believe we have something in the chat. Based off pro points, this is from Falberty. Based off the pro points, TK and Colby in the last 2 teams in automatic pool play. Actually, when it comes to the MLG rules, and I think this is something good that Branson mentioned, the EU teams in the CWL get the position first. So, for example, Infused, who's the squad who's going to make it over, they automatically get a spot before other teams automatically. So, for example, let's just say 100 Thieves, right? 100 Thieves, they lose their spot because of the fact they don't have 3 of the 4 teams. And realistically, they're not really an organization anymore. Yada, yada, yada. They only have 0 to 4 players now because I think Johnny went to Lethal. So, that means that Infuse automatically gets a spot because they're going, right? They're going. EU teams automatically get a spot. But if there are other spots available, which I don't know if there are, because there may be, I have no idea. We can actually look. Let's take a look right now. Let me see here. I'm actually going to take a look and see if there are any spots available besides 100 Thieves, and see if there are any squads who are no longer formed, and try to pull that up here in a second. And just so happens that the internet is running very slowly right now. Because the teams who qualified are obviously MV, H2K, Rise, C9, FaZe, DT, OG, LG. Because Cole split up. That's true. So Cole's spot is out there. Huh. That's interesting. Yeah, because Cole's spot will be out there automatically because Ricky's the only guy. Parasite leaves. Miracle leaves. Miracles leaves. Nameless leaves as well. Or not Nameless. Who am I missing? Parasite? I can't remember who I listed. So, why is this not pulling up the right thing? Why is this not pulling up the right thing that I was looking for? I'm not looking for the playoffs. I want to look for the regular thing. What is this? Come on. What is going on here? Okay, Stage 2 regular season is what I want. So I'm trying to check. Okay, there we go. I've pulled up the official page. So the 4 teams who did not qualify are Elevate, Complexity, Team Solo Mid, and 100 Thieves. Team Solo Mid have their spot, right? Because they've only made one roster change that got burned. 100 Thieves automatically, no, they don't have a spot. So that's one spot available. That goes to Infused. Infused automatically has a spot. Boom, they're done. Complexity, they have a spot open. Why? Because their entire team changed except for Ricky. Wait, right? Yeah. Ricky, Aches, Laceful, and Ash is the team, which I'll go over them here in a minute. And then you have Elevate, who are staying together, as far as I know, at least unless something happens. So the only spot, there are only 2 spots who are going to be available, which is 100 Thieves and Complexity spot. One of them goes to Infused, and the second goes to the highest pro points team out there right now, obviously in NA. So I don't know who exactly has the highest pro points. Maybe? Am I right on that? Or no, that's right, Cloud9 too. That's a good point, Thunder. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't even think about the teams who automatically made it. I was just assuming or making point of the teams who were in the relegation zone. Yeah, so you have Cloud9 spot available because they obviously made 2 roster changes, which is stupid. Why would they? Okay, not stupid, but that is actually pretty crazy. So you have 2 spots available. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, because Cloud9 is available. So now you have the top 2 teams as far as pro points are considered automatically get a spot. I'm looking at the chat right now. Falberty says Infuse, Cole, and TK take those spots. Do they? Okay, yeah, because Cole obviously has a lot of pro points because all their players were in there, and then TK does as well. Wow, that's interesting. Good for TK, man. They definitely need a spot. So those will be the teams who are in the pools. We obviously know that. Obviously, the top 8 NA teams besides Cloud9 who gets filled in. You guys know the story. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's really. I didn't even think about the whole topic of Cloud9. I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you guys very much for that. I appreciate it. So yeah, definitely some interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing how some of the teams do. I'm really glad that we're actually going to have some teams who were not in the Call of Duty World League be in pool play. I think that's actually a good thing. Nice to get a couple fresh faces. Kind of said that Echo Fox isn't going to be in there. But really quickly, though, I want to give a massive shout out to people who have followed so far in the stream. Thank you to X Fatal or Fat All, because technically there's 2 L's at the end of that, so whatever. Young Flame 27, and also recently Daddy CTH. So thank you guys very much for the follow. Greatly appreciate it. If you guys like to follow the stream, feel free to do so. So yeah, thank you guys very much. So where were we on? We were on H2K. We were moving on to Cloud9, and because we were talking on the topic of Cloud9, because obviously they make 2 roster changes, which is big because now they automatically cannot be in pool play. Thank you, Comment, for the follow. Just saw that, pal. Like I said, this is one of my favorite teams, though, because like I said, they have the big 3. I kind of talked about Assault. I talked about Havoc's play, and I think Havoc is incredibly talented. People realize that. People realize how talented that this man is. They realize that he's one of the best subs that we have in the game right now, how consistent that he is. And people are honestly kind of getting mad because they're like, well, he's good, but he hasn't proved himself at the highest level at a consistent basis. And my answer to that is, well, every time that he's had an opportunity to do so, he always rises to the occasion. And it's not like on LAN, Havoc just plays terribly. And granted, he hasn't had a high amount of opportunities to do that. But it's like proven until guilty. You know what I mean? It's like proven until guilty. Until he does bad, or until he doesn't perform to his highest ability, we have to assume, in some cases, because he's had more than one landing opportunity, we have to assume in that case that he is that talented at a regular level, at a consistent level. He's going to be that. It's not just, out of the five times that he had, the first 3 times he played well, and the last 2 times he played terrible, so on and so forth. So that's where I look at it and I say, yes, I think he's that consistent. I think he's a great player. Like I said, proven until guilty, and I'm not seeing him be guilty very much at all. I don't think he's had like a bad tournament whatsoever. And you even look at him whenever he was subbing in for Envy, right? Subbing in for Envy whenever the Aches and Slasher thing was going on. He played incredibly well. Incredibly well, and he's got added the team. Granted, he didn't like have to fill in a role. Like Slasher kind of backed off and let him run the sub role and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that happened. There was a lot of moving parts in that case. But ever since Havoc kind of stormed on into the scene, people realized, wow, this guy is the real deal. He's even better than he was back in Advanced Warfare, and he was very talented back in Advanced Warfare. He wasn't a top 5, top 10 player, but he was still really good. Really good. So yeah, I'm really happy with the Cloud9 team. I'm very, very happy with the Cloud9 team. I think just in general, the whole topic of them doing what they did, trying to make the most talented roster that they could, was overall a great decision. A great decision in the end, because now they have a really good team moving on into MLG Orlando. Next team, we have a lot of stuff going on with this team. We've had a lot of fill-ins. It's been Miracles. It's been Parasite. A lot of fill-ins for this team that have happened recently, but the only solid 2 throughout the entire run of this team has been Ricky and Aches, because after, really toward the end of Stage 2, like maybe the last 2 weeks of Stage 2, everyone knew that these guys were going to form a squad together. I think they knew that was going to happen, because there were some very early on tweets, like maybe the last few weeks of the CWL Stage 2, or maybe even a little bit later into that, where there were times where Aches would like just randomly tweet at the Complexity account and be like, hey, missed you guys, can't wait. Like, just like little teases here and there. And I was like, okay, is something happening right now? Because obviously the roster lock has already happened for Stage 2. He can't go to Complexity for obvious reasons. So I was really kind of, curious to see what would happen. And it came to fruition. So this has been a very long process to try to make this roster happen. This has been in the works for a very long time of having Aches come and form together with Ricky. They've been playing for a very long time as far as their separate careers are considered. So it's interesting to see that their paths, cross after so long of not playing on the same team with one another. But you can look at Aches' past and say, well, how many teams has he played on in the last, well, besides the past few years, like the last 2 titles. How many teams has he played on? Well, 3 or 4? So, with that in mind, enough beating around the bush. Complexity announced a roster today, actually, a couple hours ago, maybe at this point as the show is going live. The new changes to Call of Duty, clever, and in the major title, you can already see Aches returns. Aches returns, man. There's other guys in the team, but hey, Aches has returned. Who cares about everyone else? No, I'm joking. And they obviously announced the team of, obviously, Ricky, Aches, Lacefield, and Accuracy. We kind of knew for a very long time that Lacefield was going to be added to the team once he became a free agent. Immediately, that night or the night after, they automatically started having him play with the team a lot. He fits the role that they need, an aggressive SMG player. And he runs with it, right? He completely runs with it. And he's a great player, and I think generally he was a great free agent to be picked up automatically. He sees Aches, he sees Ricky, he's like, wow, these guys are talented. We find a 4th, and we're automatically good because we already got pro points to spare. They knew, in some cases, the teams that are going to be splitting that wouldn't be together again, because of course Aches automatically knows the information. The 100 Thieves isn't going to stay together. Ricky knows, because of the fact that he's on Complexity, that team's not going to stick together. So that's automatically 2 of the 3 spots that are going to be available at the time, which we didn't know that Cloud9 would have split yet, but I'm sure that they probably had that information to the back of their heads as well, realizing that, hey, maybe if we find the right player, we can actually get into pool play and completely skip everything else. So, a lot of smart guys in the team, especially. But as far as the team is considered, you have Cole Aches returns. I tweeted out today, this is probably... Everything is right with the world whenever I hear the title Cole Aches. Whenever I hear the title Complexity Aches in the same sentence, I automatically get excited to think that the Aches will now be in a Complexity jersey again. It makes all of the struggle that Aches has gone through worth it. Not really. But hey, I'm excited that he's on Complexity again. I think this is incredible as far as storylines to consider, which is exactly what Black Ops 3 is struggling with, what Advanced Warfare kind of struggled with as well. Storylines do not exist in the past few titles, and we need them for the most part. And kind of speaking on X video that he recently made, if you guys haven't watched it, where he kind of goes on a tangent about what he thinks of the Call of Duty scene, it's kind of interesting that he's kind of getting involved with one of the major storylines that's going to happen. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with Complexity and X together. One of the best, one of the greatest, if not the greatest player/org combinations ever comes to fruition. X has had 12 major titles with Complexity. Okay, I want you guys to hear these stats, okay? If you've been kind of like, snoring throughout the entire show, if you're listening to this, if you're driving, hear this. If you have not heard anything throughout the entire show yet, listen to these stats that Aches has with Complexity, okay? 12 major title wins. So he's won 12 majors with Complexity. 4 second places, 1 third place, and 2 fourth places. So in all of Complexity, when Aches was on this Complexity ride, really when Complexity first entered the scene is when he was on the team. And of all the tournaments that they had 12 major wins, 4 second places, 1 third place, and only 2 fourth places. They placed top 4 every single time. They won 6 titles in a row, which has never been beat on a major title level. Optic Gaming has not done that. Not to anything away from Optic Gaming. They're an incredible squad. 6 titles in a row out of the 12 were done in a row. And under all of their averages, this one is just absurd to me. Their average placing under the Complexity banner was 1.5. They literally averaged a 1.5 placing, meaning that they guaranteed got first or second place at every single tournament that they went to. A 1.5 average as an organization, that will never be beat. A 1.5. Unless a team comes in, they win, they leave. That's really the only case that's ever going to happen. 12 major titles, 6 of them in a row, and the fact that you place top 4 every single time, but you have 4 second places. And imagine if they would have won those. Imagine if they would have won those. 1 third place and 2 fourth places. A 1.5. There's a couple numbers after that, but if you round it, 1.5 average under Complexity. That is incredible. So to think, this doesn't mean that Complexity is going to be at that level again or ever again, or if a team will ever be at that capability. However, though, when you have the man who everyone loved to hate, Mr. Patrick Price, when Call of Duty was growing, when Black Ops 2 was growing, Aches was the man who everyone looked at as the villain in the Call of Duty scene, including myself, right? I looked at Complexity whenever I was younger, whenever I was watching Black Ops 2, maybe as some of you guys did as well. I was involved with Call of Duty, the Call of Duty esports scene long before that, but I was still much younger. I really had no idea what was going on, honestly, back in like Black Ops 1. However, though, Black Ops 2, I said, wow, those guys are the villains because nobody wants them to win. People will boo them whenever they win a tournament. It's like awkward whenever they win because everyone's like, oh, wow, Complexity won again. They won the 5th time. They won the 6th time in a row. It is absurd to say that any other team is better than Complexity, that any organization is better than them because you got to win the championship. That's what I'll always say about Optic. Not trying to go off on a tangent here. For Optic to be in comparison of the Complexity run, the Complexity era, the dynasty, you have to win the champ. You have to win the big one. If you don't, doesn't matter. Same thing with what we see in the NBA right now, right? The Golden State Warriors, they're the best record of all time. Best record of all time. But they didn't win the championship at the end. Does it mean that doesn't mean anything? No, of course not. That's incredible that they did that, right? Of course, circumstances are different. Same thing with Call of Duty. We have more well, at least I said we have more tournaments now, but that's not obviously the case. Advanced Warfare, we had a crazy amount of tournaments compared to Black Ops 2. Black Ops 3 a little bit of a different story, unfortunately. However, though, the run that everyone else, the other dynasties have had is incredible. Optic Gaming's dynasty is without a doubt the second best one of all time. No question. No question in my mind. In anyone's mind, if you have a logical mind. No offense. But they have to win Call of Duty XP for them to be compared. Bottom line. If you win 2 of them, great. That even puts you at a higher stance. And then most likely, if they reach that second championship, if they head into Infinite Warfare and win Call of Duty championships in that era, or in that title as well, they'll most likely be at that time, based on how many wins that they've gotten. If they haven't made a crazy amount of roster changes, which I doubt would happen. But if they win Infinite Warfare championship as well, which I know we're speaking incredibly long distance, then that will probably most likely solidify them as the best team of all time. However, that has not happened yet. Not taking anything away from Optic Gaming. I'm not taking away from anything else. I just want to point out that when things like this happen, when players form with other teams that they've previously played on, it's a big deal, and I really enjoy it. But when you have one of the best player combinations / or combinations that has ever existed, it is a big deal. At least to me. Maybe I'm the only person who really cares. Maybe that's the case. But this is pretty crazy, and I love this. I love this because Cole Aikes is back. And I feel like whenever you kind of put those 2 words together, it automatically makes you think like, wow, Aikes is going to be incredible. He's gonna be absolutely going off, and maybe that'll help him, right? Maybe having and being under the name of Complexity will bring back that drive. Not that he doesn't have the drive, because I think more recently he's had the exact same drive that he had back in the day. Advanced Warfare was obviously a different story, but I think right now his drive is as good as it has been in a very long time. So I think the addition of that, along with being under the name of Complexity, is only going to increase his skill, or not his skill, but his overall mentality, along with the players he's going to be playing with. You have Ricky as well. Really excited to see him play alongside of Aikes. Lacefield, a great young talent. Then I really mentioned this, but accuracy as well. There were a lot of guys that I could have gone with, and I like accuracy. I think he's a good player. He can be inconsistent at some points. And he's got to really... and people kind of make fun of this about him because he does really have a lot of bad luck. I mean, if you want to go back to even Advanced Warfare, he was unaware. It was like him and Happy and some other guys as well. They were unaware. They're about to be qualified for the season. And then TCM comes over like, hey, we bought your spot. Did Aware not tell you that? And they're like, no, we had no idea that they didn't tell us that. And they're like, oh, yeah, you don't have a spot in MLG Pro League season anymore. They're like, what? We had no idea. We had no clue that happened. He's played more recently for Cloud9. Plays one event, doesn't play the best. He ends up leaving the team. Cloud9 splits. They get another squad. Like, there have been so many different opportunities where accuracy has had one, and then right before stuff starts to happen, it kind of just goes down. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel bad for accuracy. He's a good player, great AR player. Looking forward to seeing how he plays. And I think if he plays well, this team can definitely be, make a run at MLG Orlando. I don't know if they're going to be necessarily playing the best team. I don't think they're going to be like an incredible squad. I still think they're missing maybe like one more factor to the team for them to be incredibly successful. Whoever that would be, feel free to obviously put that input in, or put that input. I couldn't really phrase that sentence very, very well. However, though, I'm really looking forward to seeing how accuracy plays. I think he's a good player, but I think that maybe him on the team can maybe try to maybe not necessarily hold the team back, but I'm not sure what Complexity's going to do. As long as I've talked about them, being a good squad, I think that they're not going to be necessarily at the best level. But I think they have an opportunity to make kind of like a run. We'll see what happens, though. Going to take a quick break, guys. When we come back, we're going to talk about Team Caliber, Team Allegiance, or to be decided with Mox, Miracles, Llama, and Parasite. Parasite's back? Yes, we all knew it was going to happen. We'll be right back, guys. This is episode number 5 of the HUD. See you soon. Welcome back, boys and girls. It is the HUD episode number 5. The episode number 5 of the HUD. I want to give a massive shout out to Forgiven, who recently followed 9 minutes ago. Thank you so much, Forgiven. If you guys are new, want to follow on social media, do it up above, right? Because you got LandoCon on Twitter. We got L1 Lando on Instagram. As far as the HUD is considered, you guys can obviously go to the HUD Twitter, at the HUD TV, as well as on SoundCloud, which you recently added. Only have 2 episodes up there yet, but I promise you tonight I'm going to go hard on trying to get those uploaded, try to get the full episodes so you guys want to listen to audio only. You can easily do that as well. And for those, if you are out there and you want to be a sponsor of the HUD, yes, I will literally talk about you constantly and how great your product is. Feel free to hit me up. At Leno Card on Twitter, you can look at my bio, and it has business inquiries. It'll be there. You guys just contact me there. Of course, I will test out the product, make sure it is good. But of course, when it comes down to sponsors, man, I'm always down to try and get the people who are fans or listeners of the HUD into some great esports or just some great products in general. So just throwing that out there for those who may be curious about stuff along those lines. And I've been seeing Epic Boss Killer put in the chat, he said, this podcast ever going to be on iTunes? That's a good question. We might try to go out there and maybe even try to do that as well. I'm trying to make a little bit of small strides, so get it on SoundCloud, get it on this, get it on that. But maybe iTunes. That's a really good idea. We might try to do that soon. I know SoundCloud works pretty well, but I'll do my best to try to keep an eye out on iTunes. And if you guys ever have any suggestions, I saw someone mention in the chat as well, would you consider making a break screen? Because I don't know when you're going to be back, so I don't like listening to the music, which is fine, especially if you're trying to do something. And if you're an audio listener or if you're listening on YouTube or stuff like that, I normally try to cut out the breaks so you only hear audio, so you have to worry about the music and stuff. I will do my best to try to make that happen for the stream, guys. So, yeah, I'll kind of keep that out there. If you guys have any suggestions or any ideas to try to make the show better, it's always appreciated. It's never downloaded. It's never like, wow, you actually want to make the show better. I'm insulted by that. It's like, no, I appreciate that you want to try to make the show better, and I will take that into consideration, and most likely probably do it. So, yes, if you guys obviously want to do that, feel free to email me, tweet me, whatever. So yeah, there we go. That was my little transition to the next, not only the next topic, but to the rest of the teams who are obviously in lure about the roster lock in MLG Orlando. This squad is by no means definite, but it is 100% looking likely that we will see the squad under the name of Team Caliber. Beef with the following players being Theory, Gunjar, Happy, and Colchan. I believe in the 500 series today, they're playing with that particular roster. I went specifically to look at the 500 series because this is the team who I don't know for sure is going to be together. Based on pro points and how it takes to get to MLG Orlando pool play, that could definitely rein in some decisions. So if you're saying, well, why do they have Happy? Why do they have this player, insert here, or maybe even Theory, when they could have added someone else? That could be the reason why. Theory, probably not for pro points, but based off of why, because he represents Team Caliber. So yeah, this is kind of like where we're at right now as far as the Team Caliber squad is considered. I like the team. It's a decent squad, to be honest. But I'm not sure the slaying aspect is there. It's not the same thing necessarily as along the lines of the old TSM team. But generally, you got to have a couple guys who are on the team who can get it done. Like, oh, hey, he's gonna get the job done. You need like an Assault. You need a Havoc. You need a Lacefield. You have a Colchan, I guess. And I think the main slayers for the team are easily going to be Gunjar and Colchan. I've seen Happy do well. Not on the level that I think it's consistent enough. I know at LAN, occasionally he's kind of struggled, especially when Cloud9 went to LAN. I think it might have been at MLG Orlando. He did not do the best. But I think as far as a consistent level, like whenever, sure, I can make it past the pool play teams. I can make it past the pool play teams. I can get into group play. But once I get to group play, when I play the top teams, and I play the Luminosities, the Phases, the Rises, the Optics of the world, can we actually hang with them? Can we actually hang with them? I'm not hating on the TK team, because maybe they can do that. I haven't seen them play enough to know that. What I am saying, though, is that based on previous performances as on different teams, to me, half the team is going to be getting the slaying work done, and the other half might be focusing on the objective. But generally, at least in my opinion, to make a team successful, you obviously have to have the chemistry, but you also have to have gun skill. A lot of gun skill to compete against the top teams. If you want to place top 4... 90% of the time, 95% of the time, and more recently it's been DTU who've kind of belittled this stat, you have to consistently slay out a team and be incredibly confident in more than one game type. You can't just be good at Search. You can't just be good at Hardpoint. You can't just be good at Uplink or a CTF. Generally, it's great to be good at all game types. That's not going to happen most of the time, unless you're Rise Nation. We know how likely that is to happen. But it's a decent team. My eye is definitely going to be on Happy in Theory. Probably more Theory than anyone else, because I know he's obviously the leader of this team. He's the captain of the team. They had a squad for a while. They released those guys. Of Holler, Exotic, and Khalifa. Good team. Not the best, but it was still a team who I was happy with. But it makes sense, of course, when it comes down to the whole likelihood of what it means to get into the groups, what it means to get in the pools. So it really doesn't. It's not too strange when you see a team form, and necessarily it's not. It's like, hey, we're not the best squad in the world. Like, we could have got some maybe other players who maybe fit the team better. The roles might be a little bit better, but at least we're in pool play. At least we're like one of the top 2 teams, top 3 teams as far as like pool play is considered when it comes down to pro points. So, yeah, that's kind of like where we're at right now. I like the TK team. Like I said, they're a good group of guys. However, though, I'm just not super confident in them. Let's just say that. So, I know Major Question also has been talking about the whole thing, kind of regarding, kind of, how am I trying to say this? Regarding the whole topic of players kind of being dropped right before an event takes place or right before an event actually kind of happens. Which is obviously, it happens with the best of players. It happens at times. Squads can be forming, and then at the very last second, a player can be dropped, which is really unfortunate. I hate when that happens. That's kind of what happened with Methods. Methods, for those who might have missed it, ended up tweeting out this morning, saying, kind of pointing out that he was recently dropped. He can't imagine like how this happened or what went on. Methods apparently was dropped very, very recently. I think it might have been for Goonjar, because I think they were playing with Happy. I'm not sure exactly which player it was, but I know it was either Goonjar or Happy. It might have been Goonjar, potentially. But it's a thing that happens. It's a thing that happens. It happens to the best of players. And, to be replaced like the last second, it's really unfortunate, especially if you're trying to find a squad. I know he was getting a little bit of offer, so he's going to have an opportunity to play. It's just the fact when you're on a team and you think you're feeling confident with a squad, and then just the last second, doesn't work, found someone else. Sorry, guys, So, yeah, TK, you guys are good, but I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to perform, to be honest with you. Like, so my eye is definitely on Theory more specifically, but it's also going to be unhappy in Theory, and I do hope that Methods just find a good squad or a team in general, because he is a very talented player and was playing fairly well from what I was able to witness. A couple more teams that we have. Team Allegiance was announced. I believe that was announced a couple days ago, which I think that was like something that I talked about a little bit earlier. Team Allegiance is going to be consisting of Royalty, Mochilla, Remy, and Exotic. I kind of talked about them last time. I'm not going to go over them for too long. They've done fairly well in online tournaments. They look pretty solid. It's a good squad. Roles fit, in my opinion, pretty well. They have a good balance. Chemistry could be maybe a little bit of a factor because there's like a major leader on this team. Mochilla is obviously a veteran, but he's not to me like a leader who's can maybe take over the whole squad. Remy, Exotic, and Royalty are fairly younger players. When I say younger, I mean like as far as age is considered, as well as like high level competitive experience is considered as well. So, I don't know. I think this is a good team as far as like gun skills concerned. On paper, this is a good team, but as far as overall, as far as like veteranship is considered, I don't think that's going to be there. So it's like, to me, this is a young team. This is a young team. Mochella excluded. This is a younger squad who can definitely make a run. But I don't know, man. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not, like I said, I'm not super confident in the team. I think they're a good squad through and through. I think they've got a lot of gun skill behind them. But I think when it comes down to maybe nitty-gritty situations, I think it's always good to have a veteran in the back of your heads, maybe even in your headsets, kind of giving you in some ways a little bit of advice when it comes down to it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of goes on. And of course, I think someone mentioned in the chat just now is actually going to talk about that as well. Faliberti mentioned they do suck at uplink and CTF from what I've seen. More so uplink. They scrimmed against TK with uplinks and only got 2 points. So that's really unfortunate. But yeah, that's of course you had to take that into consideration as well. 2 previous players from the squad who really struggled in uplink and CTF. Probably one of the worst teams that we've seen in a particular game type ever, being 100 Thieves. So that's obviously going to kind of transition over as well. But I do like the combinations that we do have. I like the combination of having Royalty and Exotic together. I like keeping Royalty and Remy together as well. I like the sub duo of Remy and Exotic together. There's a lot of little duos that I like together. But we'll see what happens. then we have another squad who is to be decided, or really kind of to be decided. This team is basically kind of set in stone that they want to play together. They want to be on the same team. And it's looking like they're going to stay together if they can find an organization, which is going to be the squad of Mox, Miracles, Lamagod, and Parasite. As far as I know, this team is set in stone to go to Orlando and to try to qualify for Call of Duty XP. I know some people are kind of talking about it in the chat right now. And as far as I know, like I said, I think this team is going to stay together. I know I talked a lot last episode about the whole thing with Parasite retiring. Is Parasite going to come back or not? I have to admit, I did not think it was going to be this quick. I did not think that Parasite was going to literally have 2-week turnaround where he's like, hey, I'm not going to play anymore. And then he's like, I might play. I might try to play. Whatever the rumor is, the reason why he's coming back or why he's doing certain things, he just wants to play the game, man. I mean, the day after he announced his retirement, literally the day after the show that I did, that night and the morning before, he was playing. I know I paused for a long time. Sorry, I was reading a tweet. The night before, he was literally playing with. He was like playing with I2 or whatnot. He was like playing with Intuition. He was playing with other guys. He was playing in the 500 series. He was saying that, I'm going to be playing. I'm going to be streaming probably other games. I think he's played more recently than he was before he announced retirement. Like when he was on Cole, he wasn't playing hardly at all, and now he's playing more than he was when he was with Cole in the first place. Maybe just the announcement of saying and coming to the realization that, hey, I can retire at any point was maybe what he needed. I'm not 100% sure. But I do like this team, though. I like this team a lot. You have some really, really talented guys on this team. Mox, to me, is probably one of the best young players that we have in the game right now as far as an amateur is considered. The kind of the sub duo most likely going to be existing with Miracles or either Llama or Parasite. Mox is a good overall transitional AR player, kind of plays similar. It's kind of like I mentioned earlier, like a silly. He was going to be remaining in the back of the map, but is very, very aggressive, can get the work done. He's a great, overall. How do I say this? He's a good overall like communicator, which is good. And he plays with kind of like a chip on his shoulders, man. I'm excited to see him play. I think he's going to be a good addition to this team. And I like the squad a lot. So just the overall addition of having, a good group of guys behind you as well. Lamagod is by no means a player to take lightly because he can perform when he has to, when he needs to. I think this is a good team. I do. I think this is a very, very talented team, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do moving forward. Next squad we have is Lethal, which I kind of talked about last episode. These guys have been on Lethal in past, being Johnny and Miyagi. Twiz comes back from Europe. TCM, obviously now recently back on moving this competitive scene because he's been underage, so I'm glad to see him back at the competitive scene again. Good dude. Sauce Squad, whatever he tweets out on Twitter. He's a good dude, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he performs in this title. Because I know he's been grinding out, even though he hasn't been able to play on a consistent competitive at the highest level that there is possible. So that's always good. Lethal could make a little bit of noise. These guys have teamed in the past, being Johnny and Miyagi on this particular team, so it's good to see them adding Twiz and TCM to the roster as well. So I haven't really been able to see them play too much, but we'll see what kind of happens. So there are obviously teams who are playing with one another. There might be teams who still have time to make a decision or might have time to make a roster change. Of course, roster lock is today. What time is it exactly? Despite asking many questions, I still do not know the exact answer. I've been told that it's at noon today, Pacific time. I've also been told that it's at midnight or 11:59 at Pacific time tonight as well. Who really knows? Who really knows, to be honest with you? But like I said, I'm sure for next episode that we have, I'll still be talking about roster updates, teams that happen to form. There's still some guys who are out there who might maybe have decided on a team or still are deciding on a team. See what happens with that as well. We'll kind of move on. So I was normally going to take a break after this. I'm not going to, though. But I'm going to try to go over this as quick as possible because I did talk a lot about the roster lock, and I didn't mean to. But I really want to start with the weapon patch that recently happened. The weapon patch that went down to me was annoying. It was kind of insulting in some ways as well. And I have the patch notes for those who are curious. If you would like to maybe read along this with me, so I'll post this in the chat as well for everyone. So yeah, that is the link to the patch updates that happened for the last update that happened on PlayStation 4. And these are subject to change, because if they want to, this is an update that happened. Tomorrow they can change all of this and completely change it. So I want to put that out there. So this video might no longer be relevant by 20 minutes from now. You know what I mean? No, it's probably not going to happen. They're probably going to keep it the same way. But that leads to my point, and pointing out the major things to kind of keep in mind when it comes down to this particular weapon patch. Or not really weapon patch necessarily. There's a bunch of different stuff. But speaking more specifically, things that went down: Man of War, the ADS speed was limited, so you're not going to be able to aim down sight as quickly as you previously were, which I think is good. I like that, actually. The VMP recoil stability went down. The Vesper recoil stability went up. The Vesper is almost nearly back to its original. The CUDA, excuse me, from, I believe, range kind of went down, so it's more of a viable option when it comes in a closer range, which I think really it's not really necessary to do that. My question is, why, Activision? Why? Why do we fix the Vesper again? And I'm being quiet because there's no answer. There is literally no answer to why we are making the Vesper a better weapon. Now, I understand their whole mentality around Black Ops 3 is to make every weapon viable, which I agree with 100%. If there was a percentage higher than 100, I would give it that as well. To make every weapon at a similar state to where this weapon isn't, necessarily preferred over another. There's going to be situations where you want one weapon over another. That's obviously the reason why we have different classes in Call of Duty. Ghost refused to recognize that with the Vector because it performed as an SMG as well as an AR. Granted, you had the Remington. I'll give you that. But that's probably one of the worst weapon overall stabilities that we ever had. Black Ops 3 is not comparable to that. However, I am actually convinced that Treyarch actually does not test out their weapons. Because how do you allow the Vesper to get back to the state where it previously was, and the reason why they toned it down so much? Do they actually have game testers, once they put on the patch, who test these things out? I'm not trying to throw any shade. I'm not trying to be rude to anyone, but I want people to realize that this is actually pretty ridiculous. Not just for the regular scene, but for the competitive scene as well, because now this changes the meta to the exact same thing to the beginning of the game, when the Vesper was literally the god weapon. If you have the Vesper in your hands, you literally destroy everyone in sight. They were trying to make it like the Scorpion. Well, granted, the Scorpion was good, but the reason why it worked is because it took more bullets to kill people. The Vesper kills in 3 bullets at every single range now, especially with the recoil stability changing. So what they're doing is that the Scorpion was great because it shot faster than everything else, but it also took an extra bullet or 2 bullets to kill people. So it kind of evened out in some ways. There was a time where the Scorpion was by far the best weapon in the game. Like, there was nothing comparable to it whatsoever. I'm not saying that Black Ops 2 was the perfect weapon balance. Not at all. It was not whatsoever. But I will say that they were very quick to kind of tone down the Scorpion for a while. Because I love the Scorpion, man. I loved the Scorpion with a passion. It was a great weapon. But in my opinion, they toned it down the exact way that they needed to. The same thing with the Vesper. Keep the recoil stability where it was at. It was fine where it was at. Make it hard to aim at a long range. Don't make it aim like it's an AR, for God's sakes. Make it to a point where it takes more bullets to kill, even though we do all realize that it shoots faster than other weapons do. If you put rapid fire on it, I can only imagine what would happen. So I'm not going to go on a massive tirade about this, but it is, to me, still very, very sad that we still have problems like this. And I genuinely believe that there are testers out there But I'm starting to get to the conclusion where I'm really doubting it. I'm really at the point where I'm just like, do they actually test this thing? Do they just kind of like raise it up a couple notches? They type it in on the computer, on the console, like, hey, this is what we want it to do now. Boom. Okay, hopefully it works. And I'm not trying to insult the game that I love, the people who develop the game that I love. I'm just saying, maybe try and have a very, very long time when it comes down to weapon-specific things, where we test out the weapon or the weapons and say, yes, this is viable, or no, this cannot happen. Maybe even invite professional players or people who work at the company to take care of it. Now, I'm not saying that it's at the same level that it previously was, because it's not. It's not the same Vesper that it was. But if you do look on Reddit, if you look on Twitch, you will see players who use the Vesper who are getting the exact same unbelievable kills that they were getting in the beginning of the game when everyone was saying the Vesper is broken, the Vesper is way too good, it needs to be taken down. I don't think it's going to be banned in every single game. I don't think it's going to be at the same level that it was. I'm just saying, how did we get to one extreme to more of a range where it's not really used ever? At occasion it's used, which I think is actually good how it was used. It was good. It's used in close quarter situations. Normally the first tail of a hard point, you might see it be brought out on maps like Evac or Breach. But now it's to the point where it's like the younger brother of what the old Vesper used to be. And I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a great weapon. I've been watching streams of people using it. AR players been pulling it out. It's just, to me, I don't know. I'm just really sad about it, to be honest. I'm just really sad about it. But positives, though. Positives, I'm glad the Man of War kind of went down. It's starting to become very, very OP. People started to use the Man of War basically over every other AR for a short time. And the Man of War meta kind of took a long time to progress over. Because, of course, everyone uses the M8 most of the time. You might use the HVK. Or certain things. The HVK as well was kind of mentioned as well. But I think it was good that we did see the Man of War kind of be targeted a little bit, because it was starting to become a weapon where it's like, hey, you have the Man of War, do you not have the Man of War? It's starting to become a staple ban. And when things start to become a staple ban, as long as it's not like an attached, like high caliber rapid fire, which is going to happen every game, it's kind of slowed down a little bit toward the end of the game, at least in my opinion. But I'm glad that they did end up kind of targeting that, trying to make it in some ways comparable to the others, and that's exactly what they need to do, at least in my opinion. Lower down the ADS speed. It's incredibly quick to aim in, which they've done that countless times in the M8 as well, trying to target it, trying to make it in some ways more comparable to the other ARs as well. Along with the SMGs that were kind of targeted, this is just my notes as well, need to make other SMGs more comparable to the VMP, excluding the Vesper buff, by the way, excluding that completely. But yeah, make the other SMGs viable, man. Make them viable. Make some SMGs good at a longer range, at a medium range. Make the VMP kind of difficult to use at a long range. I think the VMP is fine right now. If you want to make it, maybe kind of bring it down a little bit, make the other weapons kind of to its level, that's fine. That's why I like the CUDA. I think they should have honestly upgraded the CUDA. I think the only thing that CUDA kind of had going for it was maybe just the whole fact of having a different reticle. I've heard people say that they like the hip fire a little bit better on it, but I think a lot of people generally thought that it was better at a longer range. The fact that they're not targeting that maybe kind of evens it out a little bit. I'm not really sure, but I think the VMP recoil stability being brought down doesn't really change too much when in conclusion you also kind of downgrade the CUDA. But maybe they're trying to break those two top weapons down to the others level. We'll see what happens. It does, at least in my opinion, take around 2 weeks to make sure and kind of figure out what is kind of going on for the most part. And this patch happened, what was it, a couple days ago? I'm trying to find the exact date. I can't find the exact date. I think, if I go to the main page, it'll actually show me what date that it came out on. It was on July 27th. So it happened 4 days ago. Patch 1.14. So, along with the weapon patch, one last thing I want to talk about was the Locust. Locust was increased to a one-shot to chest, which I like personally. I think that's good. I think that's great, to be honest with you. For the fact that I like snipers being in the game. I like the fact that snipers are viable. I like how people use them to search and destroy. And I hate the fact that only one sniper allows you to get one-shot kills on a consistent basis. I like the fact that Locust is different. I like that one sniper is more powerful than the other because, there's like 4 or 5 in a game at a time. As far as Call of Duty, stats are considered, if you want to look at every single title and, average them. But I like the Locust, and I'm glad that they increased it to a one-shot to chest. Kind of gives you a guaranteed, so it's like, you know what, the SVG's banned out. You know, maybe we use this, maybe we don't use the Locust, you know, so on and so forth. Of course, you have the PO6, which is completely different than every other sniper rifle in the game. Yeah, I'm glad the Locust, though, has been kind of upgraded a little bit. I think it's good to kind of keep it on the same level as the SVG. For the most part, of course, SVG is much more preferred, even still, because of the guaranteed one-shot kill that it does have at least 90% of the time. So one last topic, to me, that I've kind of noticed and I've kind of talked about for a while, has been the Call of Duty mentality. The Call of Duty mentality, to me, is something that I've witnessed ever since I've been able to get in the Call of Duty scene. And it's the whole thing of the game is wrong, not me. You know, the Call of Duty mentality is that, hey, the game is messing up. The problem's with the game. The problem's not with me. I didn't make a mistake. The game made the mistake. Even though I'm playing the game, the reason why that happened is because of the game. And it's an issue that resides with other games. As far as esports are considered, it doesn't happen that often. If you're watching like a CSGO game, or if you're watching League of Legends, if you're watching Dota, if you're watching major esports, very rarely, if you watch those players' streams, do you see them complain about the game in general? Or, I mean, just kind of like the game, like, wow, why is this in the game? Why did they do that? Or why is this going on? I shouldn't have died to that. And of course that exists. But to the extent that Call of Duty has it in, it makes it very hard for the fans to enjoy it. And that's not the player's fault necessarily. It's not the fault of really anyone, to be honest with you. Because it's an online game. Call of Duty is not meant to be an esport. Whether you believe it or not, it's not meant to be an esport. It is a lobby or a casual game first. And it always will be until they change something up. Or unless we have a guaranteed esports title. Which I pray for every day. I promise you that. But it dwarfs the game if you see pros constantly belittling it. It's almost like, hey, let's bash Call of Duty together. And that always happens. That's even happening when people say, oh, Call of Duty is dying. Oh, this is happening there, here, and there. Whether you believe that or not, it is very, very hard to enjoy a game when it's obviously a series. Like I said, that it's hard to compare other esports to it. And that's why I said it's not anyone's fault, right? It's not anyone's fault. It's not Call of Duty's fault. That's how they're a series, right? They don't make one game. They are a series. But it's the Call of Duty mentality, though. When you tune into a player stream, if you're watching one of your favorite players playing, right? Guaranteed, 100%. If you're watching a major professional player play the game, a top 5, I don't really know, player on a major team, watch it for long enough, they're going to complain about the game, they're going to get mad at the game, they're going to start yelling at the other players because of how much hatred they have for the game at that time. Because, of course, everyone has those outbursts. There's been times where I said, I hate this game, or I hate this map, I hate this title, I hate Call of Duty. Did I really hate Call of Duty? No, I just didn't like it at that current time because I died because of a reason that I didn't think that was my fault. And like I said, granted, I can say it's not Call of Duty's fault. In some ways it can be because, you know what, maybe they didn't take the time to finish this or whatever. They had 3 years to make it. How did they not fix this? It's an ever-changing title. It's an ever-changing title, and it's hard to, in some ways, become a fan of it. Whenever players are belittling it, and the scene is belittling it. And I'm not giving Call of Duty a pass. Right? I'm not giving Call of Duty a pass from saying, you know what, it's not their fault. Call of Duty is a game that happens every year. It's hard for them to make a consistent title where everyone loves it, which is obviously true. But when you become a fan of an esport, or let alone anything, but more specifically an esport, you never realize the flaws until later. Once you dive into the game, once you watch people start to play it, when you get involved with the scene, maybe you even go on that Reddit, whenever you're a newer fan to an esport, rarely do you ever see the flaws that happen in the game. Why? Because you don't necessarily know what's going on. But if you're a newer fan to an esport, you automatically think, wow, this is, if you enjoy it, obviously, you think, wow, this is awesome. This is great. There's nothing wrong with the title from what I can barely see. So, my whole point, there really isn't a point to what I'm saying. It's just the fact that it's hard for players, or it's hard for the casual fan to get involved with Call of Duty because of the fact that whenever they finally get involved with it, when they get to the point where, hey, I'm watching streams on a consistent basis, I'm watching tournaments. Because granted, not every fan of esport, of Call of Duty esports, that they're heavily involved with the scene. I know people who watch Call of Duty that live in my area, esports at least, who have no idea about the community. They maybe know the teams, they maybe know the organizations, maybe a little bit of information about the players, but they know nothing about anything else. They just know that he's using this weapon and this is the objective of the game. That's all that they know. But they don't get a chance to see the flaws. Once they finally kind of reach that second page of So You Will of Call of Duty Esports, that's when they see all the problems with it. And it's hard to grow a fan base whenever they're constantly seeing the dirty laundry be brought out as quickly as it is. And like I said, I'm not kind of pointing out fault. I'm just saying, for esports, for Call of Duty to grow, it's very difficult for it to do so when fans are trying to get involved with it, and they're automatically seeing the Call of Duty mentality when they say, the game is not wrong, or the game is wrong. It's not the player playing it. And that's the thing that I think that Call of Duty needs to kind of fix in some cases. So if I was to say, you know what, let me just say this. I don't really have a solution to this whole thing. I can say I want to designate an esports title for Call of Duty, like I said earlier. But I want to get to the point where we have a good title and where people automatically aren't blaming the game. I want to get to the point where people are starting to be more respectful of the game of Call of Duty. That's just my opinion. There wasn't really a whole point to this. It's just the fact that Call of Duty fans and Call of Duty esports fans, we have a certain mentality when it comes down to Call of Duty. People love to belittle the game because of all the things that's done to them. Good or bad? Probably bad if you're trying to belittle it. I love the game of Call of Duty. I'll always love the game of Call of Duty. Whether I add jetpacks or they put us in space or whatever it is, the Call of Duty mentality exists right now. And it's the whole thing, like I said, the game is wrong. It's not me. I'm not the problem. It's the game that's the problem. I shouldn't be dying for this reason. And it's hard to watch esports when you know that you're not getting the most accurate result that's possible, man. I'll always say that. Randomness or outside sources that get involved with an esports title, randomness and esports does not exist. It cannot exist. It exists, but it in no way helps the game if it's at a competitive level. There are going to be other esports. Like, I know there are certain esports that kind of have a certain randomness involved with the game directly. But if you're comparing a weapon from online to LAN, you're saying, you know what, this weapon's better on LAN than it is online. I don't know. It's just really frustrating, you know? It's really frustrating to see the game, the state of it is, and where people are constantly belittling it, and it's hard for younger esports fans to get involved because they just think the game is wrong, the game is a problem, and there's no way to fix it. So on a sad note, I want to thank everyone for tuning into the show today. There was really no way for me to transition out of that. I was trying to think like a bright light at the end of the tunnel, but it really wasn't there. I want to point out, though, that I do love Call of Duty. I love the game, and I will always love the game. I love playing it. I play it almost every day that I have the opportunity to do so, unless I'm busy or doing work or something like that. I love the game. I love the fan base around it. It's my favorite fan base, my favorite esports title, and will always be my favorite esports title. Or series, I guess you could say. So yeah, that's kind of like my positive at the end of the tunnel. It's my light at the end of the tunnel. It's just the whole fact that we have a whole negative fan base around it, man. And I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of the negatives that are in the competitive scene right now. But to me, like I said, the Call of Duty mentality, it's out there. If you have a chance to maybe try, if you are streaming, if you're in a position of hierarchy in some cases, try to be as positive as you can. You know, just try to be as positive as you can. Because when it comes to younger esports players or teams or fans more specifically, casual viewers, just try to be positive. Just try to be positive about the game. That's what helps it grow. It's what helps it grow to be a positive scene around here. So, with that in mind, guys, that is going to do it for the HUD episode number 5. I appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. If you guys are new viewers, make sure to hit the follow button on Twitch to know exactly when we're going live at all times. If you guys like to follow me personally on Twitter and as well as on YouTube, you guys can do that as well. YouTube is youtube.com/airlandon, or if you guys just want to search for me as well, just type in Lando COD or something like that. Speaking of Lando COD, that is my Twitter at Lando COD. Make sure to follow me on there as well. And my Instagram at L1Lando, not really as important, but if you guys want to follow me on there, it's obviously appreciated. As far as the HUD is considered, if you guys would like to, make sure to follow the HUD on Twitter at the HUD TV to know exactly when we go live, when shows are happening. If I tweet out about it, it automatically gets retweeted out by the HUD TV, as well as follow it on SoundCloud, because that's where all the audio-only episodes are going to be at. So if you want to listen into the card, the whole point of the reason why I developed the HUD was to make it similar to a radio show, and SoundCloud is exactly what I want it to be similar to. It's not meant to be a video show. It's not meant to have that in there. So if you guys are curious, follow the HUD TV on SoundCloud. It would be greatly appreciated. At least listen to the episodes on there. I only have 2 episodes, but I'm going to be uploading them as quickly as humanly possible to get every single episode up there by tonight, if not in the morning. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but just know that they're going to be up to date very, very shortly. And as well, I didn't mention on my YouTube, I upload videos on YouTube. Most of them happen to be VODs of this, as well as if you guys want to watch them on YouTube as well, they are there for your liking. So thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. This has been the HUD. Episode number 5, man. We are grinding out episodes. We are grinding out episodes. It's been the HUD episode number 5. You guys are absolutely fantastic. And I'll see you guys all later for another episode. Have a great night. I love you. Goodbye.